The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in select states. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome. This is Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. The most powerful and influential AM radio station in America. I can't even tell you what an enormous honor it is for me to be on the station where I, as a boy, listened not only to such rock DJs as Dan Ingram and Cousin Brucey, but later tuned in for Rush Limbaugh and the great Bob Grant, also known as Robert Giganti, a giant in talk radio. 77 WABC continues to move into the digital age. You can listen to us every day at WABCradio.com. If you're not in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, where we're 770 on the AM dial. A shout out to my many family members in Connecticut, where I grew up, as well as in northern Westchester, where I was president of the student body at John Jay High School in Katona, New York, for 2 entire terms. It's interesting that the New Yorker magazine said that at the time of the Mueller witch hunt that I was unpopular in high school. Really, I won the student body election 953 to 98, and that's a fact. Tulsi Gabbard is going to join us today. She, of course, is the last person to go head-to-head with Kamala Harris in a debate when she challenged Harris and they both challenged Joe Biden for the nomination of the Democrat Party in 2020. She joins us to get her take on the 2024 election. She knows a lot about Kamala Harris. She, of course, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat Congresswoman, former national co-chairman of the Democrat National Committee, now a registered independent and a fierce critic of today's Democrat Party, which is acting most undemocratic these days. Joe Biden clearly forced out of the presidential race at the direction of Barack Obama, and all my sources tell me Joe Biden is quite angry about it. I'm not sure exactly what happened 6 hours between Biden saying that there was no circumstance whatsoever under which he would drop to the late afternoon release on stationery that isn't White House letterhead of a letter dropping from the race in which he says that he's not going to endorse any candidate to succeed him, and then almost 4 minutes later endorses Kamala Harris. The New York Post wrote that was Joe Biden's FU to Barack Obama, who he feels is the one who squeezed him out of the race. Biden is reportedly angry that Obama lined up Nancy Pelosi, as well as House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, New York Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, all to pressure Joe to throw in the towel. Let's recognize that Joe's son, who has substantial legal issues, and his wife, who really savors being First Lady, were dead set against his dropping out of the race. But it was Obama who cut off the Hollywood money, Obama who lined up the George Clooney op-ed at the New York Times, Obama who made it very clear to Joe that it was time for him to go. So now there's been an undemocratic coup in the Democrat Party where they move aggressively to nominate a deeply flawed candidate whom no Democrat primary voter has voted for, Kamala Harris. The left wing and biased media is giving Kamala Harris quite a ride, as they point out that she is potentially at least a historical figure, the first woman of color to be nominated and, in their view, potentially elected president. They're also going to try to run away from her record. Now, whether or not the media used the word czar, there is no question that she was put in charge of our southern border policy. NBC reported it. Many other media outlets reported it. Efforts to deny that are media manipulation. We've seen this before. They're the ones that told us that the Russians interfered in the 2016 election, or that Donald Trump threatened to explore whether or not there had been payoffs or there had been some illicit threat of the president of Ukraine that induced him to fire a prosecutor who was investigating Hunter. These are the same people, the ones who tell you that Kamala Harris was never the border czar, are the exact same people who told you that the laptop owned by Hunter Biden and first exposed by the New York Post had all the hallmarks of Russian intelligence when they knew otherwise. All of this, of course, has created a succession of extraordinary news cycles where we have seen a willful effort, I think, by the media to distract from more and more troubling questions that are emerging about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think that after some of those troubling facts began to tumble out, and after the Republicans had one of the most successful conventions, if not the most successful and interesting conventions in American political history, we had we're told that a tech glitch gave us the shutdown of airlines and railroads, banks, retail, causing absolute chaos, but changing the news cycle. And then, of course, the quick bailout of Joe Biden and the immediate rise of Kamala Harris has dominated the news cycle. And they're giving Kamala Harris quite the ride. It's interesting to me that the vice presidential stakes will now dominate the next news cycle. Sources, the exact same sources who told me last Friday that Joe Biden would resign by letter last Sunday afternoon, news we broke right here on the Roger Stone Show, are now telling me that the vice presidential contest has come down to a selection between Josh Shapiro, the governor of Michigan, and the governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. And that's because Senator Mike Kelly, it turns out, hat tip to Miranda Devine of the New York Post, who saw this buried deep in a New York Times story, actually is a partner with the Communist Chinese in a company that makes the kind of balloons that were used to illegally spy on the United States. He evidently does this while he's also serving on the side as the U.S. Senator from Arizona. I think the Democrats recognize that that is potentially a disaster. The last astronaut who served in the Senate and ran for president was John Glenn. He not only lost badly, but the poor fellow racked up millions of dollars in campaign debt. It is thought that Barack Obama is now deeply immersing himself in this discussion as well. I still believe the delay in Barack Obama's endorsement of Kamala Harris, which came only last week, and even then, in what certainly sounded to me like an AI-generated call. It was very odd. They had Barack Obama and Michelle Obama on speaker, but Kamala Harris in the videos holding the phone to her ear. Very weird. The whole thing sounds very disjointed, but better late than never. It is thought by some that the delayed endorsement by Obama was so that it looked less like the coup d'etat it was, that they would have let Obama come to the table late because, well, we didn't want to expose him as the man who orchestrated this coup on Joe. Remember, it was Joe Biden who insisted initially, based on what we know, that Kamala Harris join Joe Biden on the ticket. Biden boxed himself early when he said he would take a black woman running mate, although it was, I think, authoritatively reported that his preference was Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, who would have been a strong contender. Now the argument goes that if he takes Governor Josh Shapiro as if his running mate, that the fact that Shapiro is Jewish could cost them Michigan, which has a very, very large and politically active Muslim community that is pro-Palestine. If that's so, then perhaps we end up by default with Governor Walz of Minnesota. Fortunately for us, Dr. Hank Sheinkopf, who in my opinion is the preeminent Democrat campaign strategist in America today, a man who played a key role in the re-election of President Bill Clinton, the election of New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who has worked both domestically and in this country in well over 700 campaigns in 4 continents, 14 foreign nations, and 44 American states. There is no one who understands both Democrat politics and the big picture better than Hank Sheinkopf. I'm very pleased that he is going to be able to join us. Last week, the FBI director actually sought in his testimony before Congress to shed doubt on the question of whether Donald Trump was actually hit by a bullet or not. The FBI director speculated it could be glass or shrapnel which caused the president's wounds. Well, I'm not sure the glass would come from. Based on all the reports that I could find, the teleprompter was completely intact, and I'm not sure how you get shrapnel from a bullet that hasn't hit anything. No, I think Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who served as the White House physician for 3 presidents, those including George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, as well as Donald Trump, who attended to the president, who examined him, made it very clear that he had all of the signs of being hit, grazed, I should say, by a bullet. At the same time, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who didn't examine President Trump, announced that the wounds were not serious. How could Fauci know that, having never, ever examined the patient? There is no question that what we have going on here is very dangerous. It is nothing less than a cult of assassination deniers. I am very frustrated by the people who say this was a psyop. No, there was no shooter. All of this is fake. And Roger Stone arranged it. He is the mastermind. It's not true. And those who post it, yes, we have free speech in the country, but it is a damnable lie. We've only recently learned that the accused shooter was able to conduct 3 complete drone surveillances of the site of Trump's rally, but that the Secret Service declined an offer by local police to conduct a drone surveillance for the Secret Service. This, among other things, boggles the mind. Larry Johnson, who is a former high-level CIA and intelligence analyst, a former planner and advisor for the U.S. State Department's Office of Counterterrorism, joins us today to help us analyze exactly what did happen in Butler, Pennsylvania, whether it was rank incompetence or potentially willful. I have my own opinions on that, but he will join us today on the Roger Stone Show. That is a fascinating conversation you want to hang on for. This cult talking about Trump having staged this, or anyone staging it, is a lie and a vile smear. Now, of course, you have a confluence of events in which Kamala Harris will, in many ways, dominate the media, as Trump dominated the media after his successful convention. There will be enormous focus, as I said earlier, on the vice presidential selection and on the her convention. There is the prospect of real danger there if they end up having a bricks and mortar physical convention in Chicago. I think you can look to see the kind of lawlessness and burning of the American flag and potential violence like we saw in Washington, D.C., when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to Congress. That a Democrat president and a Democrat vice president, given the historic role of Democrat Harry Truman in the foundation of the State of Israel, would refuse to attend the address of the Israeli Prime Minister to the Congress and would not meet with him in public, but only meet with him in private, is disgraceful. Proves what I've said, that the old Democrat Party, the anti-communist, the pro-freedom Democrat Party of John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman is long gone. But the way Donald Trump can beat Kamala Harris is by focusing on the issues. If you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio. We've got a lot to talk about today, so fasten your seatbelt. We'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. If you've been injured in an accident and would like to know the value of your case, it's easy. Go to forthepeople.com and go to verdicts and settlements to see cases just like yours. You may see numbers that are much higher than what your lawyer's telling you. You see, all lawyers are not the same. Some may only handle a few injury cases a year. This is all we do. Injured? The choice is easy. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio. Do yourself a quick favor. Go to the App Store and download the 77 WABC Radio app, because you don't want to miss Sid Rosenberg in the morning. You don't want to miss my good friend Dominic Carter when he clashes with Anthony Weiner. That is epic, epic talk radio. You don't want to miss Curtis Sliwa as he holds the current administration of Eric Adams to account. You don't want to miss Frank Morano on the other side of midnight. You certainly don't want to miss John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby with Katz and Cosby, the best recap every single day. It's all here at 77 WABC Radio. Be sure to download that app. Remember, you can always listen to us no matter where you are at WABCRadio.com. As I was saying before the break, I think it is vital that Trump and the Trump campaign, when they're able to define Kamala Harris, keep this focus solely on her record, and a disastrous record it is. Pointing out that she's dumb or inarticulate or attacking her over her sexual history, I think would be a strategic mistake. Look, I admit to you, Willie Brown, the former Speaker of the California Assembly, the former mayor of San Francisco, a master politician who was the mentor, shall we say, for Kamala Harris, is a friend of mine. He's also been in the Hall of Fame as one of the international best-dressed men in the country, on the globe, several years in a row. I publish my international best and worst dressed list on New Year's Day, and out of respect for Willie Brown, I'm not going to talk about any of that. But let's focus on the fact that under the charge of Joe Biden, and specifically his designated hitter on the border, 20 million, based on my sources, people I trust, 20 million illegals have entered this country, bringing crime, drugs, fentanyl, sex trafficking, as well as the fiscal pressure on the taxpayers in states like New York, where taxpayers are required to pay for social services for those who are here illegally, even if it means cutting services for their own taxpayers. Yes, I think Kamala Harris's support and encouragement of Black Lives Matter, a violent movement in which destroyed millions of dollars of public and private property, which attacked American citizens, conflicts in which 25 Americans died, shows a radical ideology. She's also been foursquare for defunding the police. These are legitimate issues. This is her legitimate record, and it is more than fair game. No one went to jail in those horrific Antifa BLM riots, as many did for the so-called January 6th demonstration. No one will be prosecuted for the violent protests we saw in Washington, D.C. from pro-Palestinian rioters who burned the American flag in front of Union Station. But again, I speak only of Kamala Harris's record. They tried to erase in real time that she was urging people to go to the fund set up to bail these radicals out of jail. And that's a fact. It is fair, I think, to ask Kamala Harris whether she was approached about removing Joe Biden under the 25th Amendment as a part of the machinations of Barack Obama. I'd also point out that she said only before that disastrous debate in which Joe Biden literally melted down before our very eyes that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack. She said that he was on top of it. What did she know, and when did she know it? I think that's a reasonable question. It's Kamala Harris who's told us that Bidenomics is working. As inflation destroys the buying power of our dollars, where gas prices skyrocket, and virtually all of the new jobs they claim to have created, as many as 6,000, are actually part-time jobs, while wages, which saw their greatest rate of growth under President Donald Trump, are, stagnant at best. The Democrats point to the $200 million raised online through Act Blue as proof of Kamala Harris's popularity and viability. But we know, based on great work by journalists like James O'Keefe and many others, that millions of those dollars are laundered. They are coming in the form of multiple small and medium-sized donations that the donors listed deny making, and in many cases, cannot even theoretically afford. Interesting that Act Blue has now suddenly turned off the feature in which your credit card or debit card in which you are making the donation does not have to match the address to the person it was issued to. This is a major scandal that has to be explored. House Republicans should begin exploring it. Trump's decision to return to Butler County, Pennsylvania, to pay his respects to Corey Comparatore, the 50-year-old fire chief who was tragically shot in the head. When those on the internet who claim this was all a psyop missed that horrific death, plus two others wounded. He is returning there. It's interesting because, frankly, the media is desperate to get that entire story out of the news. That's why it's a good idea to go back there to pay tribute to Corey Comparatore and to remind everybody about the unanswered questions surrounding the attempted murder of the 45th and soon-to-be 47th president. House Speaker Johnson says that he'll appoint a special committee to investigate the attempted murder of Trump. I think that is warranted, but the idea of Congressman Dan Goldman, who said publicly that Trump had to be, quote, eliminated, close quote, or Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson, who filed a civil lawsuit against Trump accusing him of insurrection prior to being appointed chairman of the January 6th committee, in which he was supposed to conduct an unbiased inquiry into what really happened on January 6th. The idea of either one of them being a member is repugnant, and no one will buy it. Because the rise of Kamala, the selection of the vice president, and what we hope will be an interesting convention will dominate the news cycle. As I say, it will take some time for the Trump campaign to define Kamala Harris, but define her they will. Meanwhile, I can tell you that the rumors that Robert F. Kennedy is going to drop out of the race to endorse Donald Trump or just drop out of the race is completely and totally false. It is baseless. It is malicious. I'm not for Robert Kennedy. I admire his positions and his courage on a few issues, but I've concluded that in the swing states, I think he takes more votes disproportionately from Donald Trump than Kamala Harris, although we'll wait for new polling to confirm that yet again. But I want to put that rumor to rest. Equally false is the rumor that Donald Trump is unhappy with and about to replace J.D. Vance as his running mate. Completely false. Anyway, we've got a lot of politics today to get through. Dr. Hank Sheinkopf, the preeminent Democrat strategist in the country, joins us momentarily. You don't want to go anywhere. Tulsi Gabbard, the last person to debate Kamala Harris, joins us later in the program to talk about that experience. We have a jam-packed show for you today. So as the great one himself, no, I love Mark Lynn, but I speak of Jackie Gleason, would say, away we go.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. If you're listening to us on the radio, don't touch that dial. If you're out of town, you can always listen to us at WABCRadio.com, where we are live streaming worldwide in 173 countries. Right now, we are privileged to have the preeminent Democrat campaign strategist in the country, Dr. Hank Sheinkopf, who is, in my view, one of the most learned, wise men in the Democrat Party, who has a deep understanding of American politics, deep understanding of his party. Hank Sheinkopf has actually been involved in over 700 political campaigns, a disproportionate number of them being extraordinarily successful. Worked on 4 continents in 14 foreign countries and 44 of these American United States. He was an absolute key player in the re-election of President Bill Clinton, the election of New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, as well as a former president of the Dominican Republic and a former president of Mexico. He is someone with a unique view, and he always gives you to it straight. There's not a partisan tinge in his analysis. He's a truth teller. It is a huge honor to have Hank Sheinkopf join us now on the Roger Stone Show. Hank, welcome.
Roger, if I could live up to half of what you said, I'd be a lucky man, but it's a pleasure to be with you.
Folks, listen, Democrat Party leaders, union leaders, and important opinion makers in the Democrat Party listen to Hank Sheinkopf, who's just a shrewd analyst. That's why I wanted to get him today. So, Hank, this is it's the most tumultuous time I can remember. I can't help but be reminded of the 1968 election, the many parallels here that I see. The specter of assassination hung over that presidential contest because of the horrific murder of not only Dr. Martin Luther King, but Senator Robert F. Kennedy of New York on the night he won the California primary. With all due respect to RFK, he really does edit history a little bit when he said his father was leading. Despite that big victory in California, I would argue that Mayor Richard Daley, who'd been so integral to the rise of John F. Kennedy, was going to stick with Lyndon Johnson and Vice President Hubert Humphrey because of Daley's support for the war. And in the end, this is all opinion. Of course, I don't think Kennedy would have ultimately been nominated, but unfortunately, an assassin's bullet ensured that we never found out. So we have this sequence of events here where, like 1968, sitting president Joe Biden has because of his unpopularity and doubts about his ability to win, stepped down as LBJ did. We have a Democrat Party deeply split by a foreign war. Those days it was Vietnam. Today it is the struggle between Israel and Iran. Let's see who this really is. One in which, yes, I'm sorry, I line up with Israel. It is also true that Trump is staging what could be the greatest single political comeback since Richard Nixon. Trump and Nixon both having lost a presidential candidate, although Trump disputes that the second time, but both of them coming powerfully back to seize their party. So, and now, of course, Joe Biden's drop and the rapid rise of Kamala Harris, a candidate, well, in truth, no Democrat primary voter voted for. On this program, you said one of the smartest things I've ever heard, that the Democrats didn't understand the toxic mix of open borders, of an anti-job regulation and high taxes. It didn't understand their working class base, and that they would ultimately likely be punished for it. So much has happened since then. Let me shut up and let you talk, Hank. What's going on here in America today?
Well, look, we have a country that is going through a very, very, very tumultuous demographic and economic shift. The Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party that you helped to take apart, frankly, Roger, in the early part of your career, setting the scene for the moving of white blue-collar Catholics away from the Al Smith coalition into the Republican Party as voting participants, not necessarily as registrants, which is a pretty extraordinary thing. But the Democrat Party is in very serious trouble. It no longer has a coherent ideology, but rather is a collection of clans who come together only on specific occasions. And the Republicans have a much more cogent, bordered, frankly, because it's a geographical context to this, and a shared set of values that revolve around, frankly, one candidate right now. Not so bad. They're in a better position to win, but right now they're not going to win. but it's a long time between here and Election Day, and that's kind of the moment. That's at the moment.
Yeah, as I see some of the early polling emerge, it is my view that you can't poll in the eye of a storm. It's almost impossible to get an accurate view of what the voters really think. Things are moving so quickly here that opinions are shifting. Events like the attempted assassination of Trump, or like Joe Biden being, I think, forced from the race, those have an impact on voters, but you can't poll, in the immediate aftermath before things settle down. We're seeing something here that we've never seen before. I have to say it, the party that's been whining constantly about democracy and Donald Trump being a threat to democracy is the party that tried to keep Trump off the ballot, that Trump tried to use the criminal justice system to throw him in jail, tried even today to censor ideas and thoughts that they don't agree with, that aren't politically correct on social media and the internet. The same folks whose FBI conducted 278 warrantless searches of American citizens. But it's going to be a while before we see this race. I would argue, Hank, that there are three factors here that are crucial. Kamala Harris's performance on the stump. She has to prove that she's up to this. It's not enough to have this halo created by the media. Whether she can continue to raise money at the clip that she has, and that money can withstand an examination to ensure that it is indeed all legal, and then where she stands in the polls when things settle down.
You're not going to know. Yeah, I'm sorry, Roger. You're not going to know much, and you're right, until after the Democrat convention. If the Democrats had the chaos that occurred in Chicago, that could occur in Chicago as did 1968, will be a very different game, all entirely together. Then the halo effect of Harris as the golden woman at the moment will shift dramatically. There's other things going on here, too. I think that her choice of VP in this case does matter, because it'll be a signal to the Democrats and to the Republicans where she's headed. There are 5 states really in play now. You take Pennsylvania out of the equation. Kelly seems to make a lot of sense, the senator from Arizona, because he's the husband of a woman who was the victim of an attempted assassination, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. 1, 2, because he's an American hero. The Democrats need something that gives them positioning as a party of patriotism at a time when we're as close to a world war as we've been probably since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And Americans are not dumb. They really do get a sense of things. They don't vote on foreign policy issues, but they vote against chaos and instability. And the Democrats have to somehow find a way to prove that they're the party of stability, and having a hero, an astronaut, on the ticket would probably be a good thing.
Very, very, very interesting. My sources, which are not nearly as good as yours when it comes to the Democrat Party, but many have suggested that Governor Josh Shapiro could bring the Keystone case state, which is, at least at this point, crucial to the strategy of both parties. It's a must-carry state for both Donald Trump and for Kamala Harris, presuming that she is the nominee. I guess I should ask you, if she does not perform, if her poll numbers are not good, there's nothing legally binding these delegates. They're not bound by party rules. They're not bound by voters in the primary. They're not bound by law, certainly. Are we absolutely certain, in your opinion, that she will, without question, be the Democrat Party nominee?
She will be the nominee for the same reason that she became the nominee. She became the nominee because the Democrats lost their minds when they looked at data, and they saw that they had no shot with Biden at the top of the ticket of holding on to the Senate and or taking back the House. So the decision was made to remove Biden. It was carefully constructed over a period of time, well executed, lots of hits, very few errors, including remaking Kamala Harris and make her ready for the job as a candidate. So she'll be the nominee. They can't afford not to make her the nominee, because if they do that, then the black vote will not perform with the intensity they need to win in states where the blacks matter more than others, including Georgia, as an example, and potentially Pennsylvania, although people look at Pennsylvania politics and they get it wrong. Proportionally, the western part of the state, which is much more conservative, votes with greater intensity proportionally than the eastern part of the state does. And that's very important to note. But I don't think Shapiro is the I don't think Shapiro would be the choice, unless, again, not to be cruel, but a Jewish fellow and a one-term governor with some previous problems. I think it was a sexual harassment thing. Please forgive me if I'm wrong, Governor of Pennsylvania, but that versus someone who can carry a Catholic who can help in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Arizona and Nevada. I think that's a clear problem for them, and they need somebody to balance it off. They've got to be very much like the states they need, and I think an astronaut who's a hero and is a Catholic gives them that ability. I don't think Shapiro does.
I am told by my sources that there is that concern, that the idea of a woman of color that will be, of course, contested because her heritage is Indian and Jamaican. She's not an African American, and we don't. There's going to be a lot of argument about those communities, and we as Republicans have the stupid idea that everyone who has dark skin thinks alike, and it's just not true. But that is the stupid way Republicans have looked at the communities of color. I think it may be a little too much at first. There is some thought that Shapiro also could, while he might gain the Democrats' Pennsylvania, I think that's arguable, but he could cost them Michigan, where you have a very large, a very active Muslim community that previously has been a mainstay of the Democrat Party. They are already upset about this administration's policy in the Middle East. We're going to see, I think, Chicago 1968 type protests at the convention if they go with a real on-the-ground live convention, as the Republicans did in Milwaukee. I'm not wishing for violence, but I think it's going to happen. Do you think it's fair to say that the candidacy of Governor Shapiro could cost the Democrats Michigan?
I think that's entirely true. It could cost them Michigan. I also believe, frankly, Roger, that if there are violence akin to 68, I mean, you mentioned the 68 setting. If we have that again, it's higher probably the Republicans win the election. Why? Because people, when there's chaos, and that's the Nixon formula, when you have chaos and disorder, the out party tends to win. I mean, it's been consistent throughout American history. You had it, Reagan, 1980, same thing, chaos and disorder, right? Inflation, bad economy, the Iran hostage crisis, sense that things are out of control, that a leadership was required that was able to control things in some fashion. Republicans or the out party tends to win. I mean, there's, again, Clinton to Bush won, right? The economy is out of control, things are out of control, jobs are down, and on and on. Guess what? The Democrat win. That's the out party and the party that restores order. It is not. If there is chaos in Chicago, the patina that Vice President Harris has right now will dissipate, unquestionably so. And I think it's a much closer race than people think. I mean, the states that we've talked about that matter are also economically sensitive. The Trump argument about the economy and what the cost is of the gas pump is going to have some value in Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, certainly Wisconsin. I mean, those are real things. So if you have chaos, you have the economy static, regardless of what the facts may be, it's the feeling that people have that matters. It increases the chance that Republicans will win. I also kind of think that the smart move by the Republicans is to do little to damage her as they right now, and to wait till after the convention while things are on a high. If you go after her now, I think it creates a different kind of problems because she's going to have dominance over the television airwaves for the period of time going through the convention. And then things will dissipate depending what the Democrats do and the conditions outside the convention center.
I agree with all of that. In my opening segment, I pointed out that I think that it is vitally important for Trump and his campaign to have the discipline to keep this campaign focused on issues that impact voters. The cost of food, the cost of gasoline, the cost of available, affordable housing, the safety of their streets and neighborhoods and communities. And that if the campaign degenerates into making fun of Kamala Harris because they say she's stupid or because of her sexual history, I think that would be a huge strategic mistake that would only rally women voters to her side. Correct. Who think she's being unfairly attacked. It would
be a disaster. It would make the reproductive rights issue the salient issue more than it already is in many states, and the states that the Republicans need to win and the Democrats need to win, would not be a wise move. This is about finding something, as Ailes and McCarthy did in that famous independent expenditure called Willie Horton, which people forget about sometimes. There will be one case, guaranteed, where there will be somebody that she ran the second largest prosecutor's office in the country. It's called the California Attorney General's Office. There will be somebody that went on. There will be somebody who was a migrant. There will be somebody that illegal immigrant, something that happened, and God forbid there were cops killed. If that's the case, that's the campaign in the states that she needs, that he needs. Different campaign.
All right, folks, you're tuned in to the Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. We have the high privilege of speaking to Dr. Hank Sheinkopf, to my mind, the preeminent Democrat strategist in America today. We're honored to have him, so don't go away, and we'll be right back with more of Hank Sheinkopf and the Roger Stone Show.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC. Without any question, the most powerful and influential AM radio station in America today. We're honored to have with us Hank Sheinkopf, my mind, the preeminent Democrat labor strategist in the country today, a man with deep experience, a man who has elected presidents, elected governors, elected presidents of some foreign nations, a learned and wise man who always tells you the truth when you ask him a question, which is why I was so anxious to get his take on what we have happening. Hank, let me ask you this. There has been some argument that Kamala Harris should select Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, as his running mate. That argument goes that the choice of Josh Shapiro will cost them the votes of the traditionally Democrat Muslim community in Michigan. That the appointment of Senator Kelly from Arizona is problematic because of his involvement in a business venture with Chinese Communist partners where, yes, believe it or not, they actually make the kind of surveillance balloons that flew unencumbered across our country during the Biden administration. That Walz, who candidly I had to look up to find out who he was, maybe non-controversial. And let's face it, Donald Trump would not have been in Minnesota Saturday if his pollster, Tony Mauricio, did not think that Minnesota was potentially within grasp.
Well, look, he's a great pollster. He happens to know what he's doing. He's very smart, someone I respect a lot. The question becomes, do you need somebody with a name or you need somebody with a location? And real estate, location. So Walz shows up. He's from Minnesota. He's a Midwesterner. He's in a state that has a significant Muslim population, by the way. People forget that. Does he do what you need done in Michigan, in Wisconsin? He probably does a lot more what you need done in Wisconsin than Michigan. It's a different cultural place, okay? Is he useful in Pennsylvania? And can he help win Western Pennsylvania? Possibly, though that's going to be tough for any Democrat. And Arizona and Nevada. Does he help there? It's going to be about him. I mean, again, Kelly has certain strengths and a weakness that you point out very carefully. Who knows about Walz? The good news is nobody knows anything. You know, in your experience, in my experience, when you don't know anything about somebody, you get to paint the picture the way you want, right? We can, the Democrats can paint the picture any way they want. They certainly could. So that you don't know a lot about him means he's probably not got a lot of scandal or a lot of things wrong with him. And it might be a good move. I don't know enough about him to cast a judgment, but I do like Kelly for those reasons, and I don't like Kelly for the reason you raised.
Fair enough. Look, it was former President Richard Nixon who told me when you're trying to pick a running mate, don't look for somebody who can help you. There is no one who can help you. Just find someone who doesn't hurt you. At the end of the day, vice presidential candidates have virtually never affected the outcome of the race. There are reports today that I think are baseless that Trump has some kind of seller's remorse or buyer's remorse over the selection of J.D. Vance. But let me ask you, Hank, what do you think of the Vance selection?
I think Vance's selection was a good one. I think Vance has to learn how to orate a little bit better on the stump. And I think that he doesn't understand his role. His role is to do what Trump should not be doing, which is he's Spiro Agnew of 2024, which means he's to be former President Trump's protector on the stump, and he's got to unload appropriately without venom in places where it matters so that Trump is protected from being portrayed as venomous. If Trump is portrayed as being venomous towards her, it could be very, very, very not very good. And I think Vance can get away with it. You know, Trump can always point and say that, Vance, I told him not to do that. That's different. But Vance isn't performing his role properly yet. He's got to be trained to do it.
I was encouraged when immediately after Joe Biden announced, or those around him, I should say, announced his very strange withdrawal from the race, which comes not on his official website, but on his official social media platform, but his personal one, in a letter in which the signature doesn't really look the same as all the other signatures of Joe Biden I've seen. And it's, as I said earlier, it says he's not going to endorse a candidate to succeed him, but he immediately endorses Kamala Harris. I thought that Vance did a good job of raising an obvious question on the minds of many Americans, which is if he's not well enough to go through the rigors of a presidential campaign, if he's not mentally and physically fit to do that, how is he mentally and physically fit to continue as our president? I still believe that it is yet possible that he may not finish out the term. I'm not no ill wish for him, but the man doesn't look well, and that would enhance the candidacy of Kamala Harris if she were suddenly a sitting president. In this atmosphere, anything can happen. But I thought Vance was very wise to take the point on that issue, showing that maybe he does understand that he should leave the hardline attacks to others. When Kamala Harris says that American taxpayers should pay for the health care of all of the people who are in this country illegally, that is, I think, an extraordinary issue that Vance and Trump should be pounding. When Kamala Harris tries to walk away from the record of the Biden-Harris administration regarding our southern border, where essentially, even though they tried to deny it, open borders is our policy, and they try to claim that a bipartisan bill that came forward that would have guaranteed that 2 million people could still enter the country illegally automatically under the bill, that was some fix that the Republicans refused to approve for political reasons. I don't think that's going to work, but this all has to remain on the issues for it to be successful. And
Agreed.
if it degenerates into name calling, that's a mistake. Now, Democrats are calling Trump a convicted felon and a criminal and so on, and Republicans are calling Kamala Harris a Marxist who has an extreme ideology. They're going to have to lay that out on a factual basis, not just with name calling. Name calling here is not, in my opinion, going to work.
That's my point. What Vance's job is to do is to create the differences in policy in a way that sticks in people's brains. What Trump's job to do is to be the president in waiting. And by that I mean every time they call him a convicted felon, so what? You always got to say is, look, they can call me whatever they want, but I can tell you when I'm president again, we won't have people crossing the border and using this country, and people will respect us. Because the question on the migrants goes to the coalition that he's assembled. They are blue-collar, white people in many cases, and others who don't want to have chaos in the country, who don't want to see the country taken advantage of because they identify as Americans. If the country's taken advantage of in this way politically, they feel taken advantage of. Trump is the way to remedy that. And that's a good argument. If they go out and start to beat the devil out of Harris, no one will pay attention to what they have to say. That's the difference.
All right, a quick question. We only have a couple minutes, so I apologize. But New York City Mayor Eric Adams, quick to endorse Kamala Harris. Substantial media reports of pending investigations and perhaps even indictment. What are his future political prospects? Does he face a Democrat primary? Does he get that far? What's your view?
Let's see. In the last 70 years, two Democrat mayors who've been elected to serve one term and weren't reelected. One was Abe Beame, the fiscal crisis. Second was David Dinkins. It was Crown Heights riots and crime. Eric Adams is operating a new system with no runoffs, but rather ranked choice voting, which is awful and not a good system in my view. But that being said, will he have a race? The answer is yes. Can he win the race? Ranked choice voting may interfere with his ability to win the race. But and indictments and convictions and who knows what else. The FBI has been at this, the U.S. Attorney's been at this for a long time with Adams and the people around him. Time to put up or shut up.
Well, of course, I don't think they will charge him before an election. Of course, we're told their policy not to do that unless, of course, your name is Donald Trump. All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We are very grateful for Hank Sheinkopf, the preeminent Democrat and labor strategist in the country, joining us today with his unique perspective and a sophisticated analysis of these uncharted political times. Thanks for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. Continued health and goodwill. I'll see you.
All right. God bless you. Folks, that was Hank Sheinkopf. Nobody knows more about American politics. Nobody knows more about New York politics than he does. And you're listening to him on the Roger.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you're tuned in to the Roger Stone Show, where we talk politics, news, history, food, style, and many times whatever you want to talk about when we open the phone lines. I am deeply disturbed by the continuing questions that seem to be emerging from Butler, Pennsylvania. We have recently learned that the Secret Service and local law enforcement fully aware that the alleged shooter, who they claim is a man named Thomas Matthew Crooks, was on the premises armed for 62 minutes, yet they neither informed President Trump or evacuated him from the location as the Secret Service protocols would require. We now know that the alleged shooter, who again the government claims to be Thomas Matthew Crooks, utilized a drone to do a surveillance and learn the layout of the rally location, at least 3 surveillances, yet the Secret Service repeatedly turned down officers from law enforcement for a drone assessment to secure the location. We've learned the alleged shooter was allowed to case the location menacingly, pacing around the compound ominously in the hours before the shooting took place. The alleged shooter was walking near the magnometers, those are the machines you have to walk through to search you for a firearm, so suspiciously that rally goers complained about him. We've all now, I think, seen the videos of people pointing out a shooter on the roof. There, don't you see him? The man on the roof, even though we have seen, because of the high-speed photography of a photographer, the bullet whizzing by Trump's head, and a rally attendee, Fireman Corey Comparatore, was murdered in the gunfire. We have lunatics trying to tell us that no bullet hit Donald Trump, that this whole thing is some kind of psyop. That is just sick. The man joining us now is someone who knows a lot about this subject. Larry Johnson is a former CIA officer and intelligence analyst, former planner and advisor to the U.S. State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. As an independent contractor, he's provided training for the U.S. military special ops community for over 24 years. Since its founding in 1998, Larry Johnson has been the managing partner of BERG, B-E-R-G, the Business Exposure Reduction Group, Associates, LLC, specializing in investigations into money laundering and other strategic issues. Larry, I've followed him for years at Continuum News. He is an unabashed truth teller, and I'm honored that he can join us today. Larry Johnson, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger, for a very generous introduction.
I just continue to be confounded by what I see coming out of Butler, Pennsylvania. Additionally, the alleged shooter, who the government assures us is Thomas Matthew Crooks, was actually allegedly confronted on the rooftop by a local police officer who knew that he was armed but backed away and left the roof, allowing the alleged shooter to target President Trump. The state police alerted the Secret Service that the alleged shooter was on the rooftop with a rangefinder, even texted a picture of the man to a number that apparently was provided by who we believe to be a federal agent. Police also had eyes on 4 other suspicious-looking individuals. Senator Ron Johnson did say that a government briefing indicated to him that there may have been more than one shooter. Larry Johnson, what's going on here?
I just had a conversation with a retired Secret Service buddy of mine who was, he ran Ronald Reagan's detail after Reagan was shot. He also headed up the training division at one point in his career. And so he's still well plugged in. He agreed with me. This was an inside, deliberate attempt to kill Donald Trump. This was not a simple case of incompetence. The mistakes and errors made by Secret Service management up and down the chain of command cannot just solely be attributed to stupidity or just utter incompetence. This was there was an element of deliberate sabotage to this, and so this is I think it's incumbent that the pressure be continued. For example, the current deputy director that has been elevated to acting director, he was the guy in charge actually making the decisions about whether Donald Trump's group would get extra security beforehand. So now they put the fox in charge of guarding the hen house, and it's downright dangerous.
Seems to be the case. I mean, I've just learned that the detection canines, the dogs that are used who can smell the munitions, were not used that day. We also know that the sheriff's deputies for the county were not wearing their body cams. Inexplicable. All of these things seem to point to exactly what you said. I said, based on a conversation with an agent myself last June at the Turning Point USA event in Palm Beach, that I was told that requests for additional resources and manpower for the president's security had been routinely denied by the Department of Homeland Security. A spokesman for the Secret Service vehemently denied that in a written statement, only to walk it back and admit that, yes, Secretary Mayorkas had declined the request for more manpower, more personnel. Shockingly, I noticed in Minnesota that the officer who seemed to have trouble holstering her weapon as Donald Trump was being put in the car was on the detail last night in Minnesota. I'm almost virtually certain I saw that. I just find that hard to believe. In your opinion, Larry, do you think going forward, with the FBI now suggesting Donald Trump he should do no more outside rallies, which of course is his trademark and he's not going to eliminate, do you think that he can rely on the U.S. Secret Service to protect him?
No, I don't. And I think it's incumbent upon Trump to bring in a team of people who are experienced professionals and many of them would be former Secret Service, but people who are actually squared away. There are guys out there, ranging from even like Dan Bongino as an example, because Dan was a good agent in terms of running protective details, but Trump should not rely upon them, no more than he could rely upon the FBI. I mean, we've seen an FBI clown show this past week in the person of Christopher Wray. If you recall, during his testimony, he made two sort of inexcusable errors, and many people may think I'm exaggerating the one. First of all, he said that they discovered 8 cartridges next to the body of the suspected shooter. Now, understand, a cartridge is a fully intact piece of ammunition. A cartridge consists of 4 components. It has a bullet, a shell casing, a primer, and the gunpowder inside. That is a cartridge. What happens when you fire a cartridge, it ejects a shell casing. So here's the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, saying they found 8 cartridges. I took it upon myself. I contacted public affairs at FBI headquarters, and they came back and said, yes, Wray was wrong. He's meant to say shell casing. So you get an amateur hour like that. But then, to compound it, his job is to talk about evidence and facts. But instead he says, I don't think Donald Trump was hit by a bullet. What? Based on what? What we know for a fact is that gunshots were fired at Donald Trump. And we have video evidence or photographic evidence of a bullet streaking past his head. So, I mean, it's just, again, it underscores how politicized these people have become, and they are not to be trusted by anyone.
Sadly, I have to tell you that I predicted the attempted assassination on Donald Trump as early as 2018. Let's listen to this.
Welcome, everybody, to Conversations That Matter. I am your host, Alex Newman, senior editor at the New American Magazine. Back in late 2017, I interviewed Roger Stone, the legendary political operative. He was with Richard Nixon. He was with Ronald Reagan. He's been with Donald Trump, Senator Bob Dole. I mean, he's been right at the heart of American politics for generations. And he told me that Donald Trump was the real deal, that the deep state was after him, and that they were going to use anything necessary, including monstrous dirty tricks, to try to stop his progress in making America great again. And he actually predicted pretty much everything that happened. It was extraordinary, up to and including what Roger called Plan C, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
There you have it, Larry. I'm not. I stand by that. I said that because, based on my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy: The Case Against LBJ, in which I documented the Secret Service's various actions on the day of Kennedy's assassination, which they very clearly violated their own regulations and stood down. The fact that they even took the motorcade through Dealey Plaza, violation of their protocols. The car comes to a full stop. The buildings within 300 yards of the car are not searched and sealed. Same thing we saw in Pennsylvania. The motorcycle officers are supposed to be on both sides of the presidential limousine, 6 of them. There's 1 motorcycle officer. He's ordered to ride behind the presidential limousine. The 2 Secret Service officers who are, by regulation, supposed to be on the rear bumper, as they were when JFK visited Miami, as they were when JFK visited Chicago, just in the days before going to Dallas. They were not there. So for these reasons, I realized that Donald Trump poses an existential threat to the ruling elite who've been running the country, and that this was very likely to happen. I guess my question to you, Larry, is it possible, as I fear, that it will happen again?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's a high risk, and therefore, but it's one that also can be stopped or curtailed with appropriate security practices and professional personnel. You know, the problem they had in Pennsylvania was the Secret Service was supposed to push the security perimeter out at least 500 yards, and in some instances 1,000 yards. It's always depends upon what the line of sight is out on the horizon. They didn't do that. They didn't even go out. They barely went out 100 yards, and the Crooks was clearly outside that perimeter. That was the most egregious failure. But then, the failure in communications, the failure to have proper leadership, the failure to have a proper tactical operations center, the failure to have integrated communications, the failure to properly brief the police and agree upon action plans for a variety of contingencies. We're cascading. We're not pointing to just one thing, one isolated problem. We are talking about a level of incompetence that, you might as well just grab somebody off the street and say, hey, we're putting you in charge of putting together the Secret Service plan today. I think the average person passing by on the street might have come up with a better plan than what the Secret Service did.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Larry Johnson. He is a former intelligence officer with the Central Intelligence Agency, also an intelligence analyst and former planner and advisor to the U.S. State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. He's helping us break down a number of the vexing questions around the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. We've got more with Larry Johnson, so please keep your radio right there at 770 on the AM dial, or stay tuned in to us at WABCRadio.com. We'll be back with more of Larry Johnson. Also coming up, the last woman to debate Kamala Harris in a presidential debate. Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat congressman, joins us coming up on the Roger Stone Show. You're not going to want to miss that. We'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Roger Stone. We're talking to Larry Johnson about the many troubling things we are learning about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I want to note that I, sorry to say, I saw the fact that Joe Biden would drop out. I said it publicly. I also have predicted that Kamala Harris would yet be president. Let's play that, if we may. Now, as a veteran of many years in American politics, something somewhat shocking. Joe Biden will not be the nominee of the Democratic Party in 2024. Kamala Harris will briefly become president. Now, I go on there to speculate that the potential for Michelle Obama, because I believe that if the polls show, after this huge media buildup, but a closer examination of Kamala Harris as a candidate, she's trailing in the polls, that anything is possible at a Democrat convention in which nobody's bound by party rules or law, and Kamala Harris didn't win any delegates. So I still think I may yet be proven right about that. I do have a concern that some may think that the way to elevate Kamala Harris's candidacy is to have her replace Joe Biden after the Secret Service's involvement, or actions, I should say, in Butler, Pennsylvania. Pardon me for being suspicious. Larry, your thoughts?
Yeah, this I've been hearing for quite a while from other, let's call them insiders, that the plan was to replace Biden. And as you stated, to replace him ultimately with Michelle Obama. That Michelle reportedly had agreed to do so more than a year ago. But as with all plans, and you know this from your own experience, running political campaigns going back 40 years ago, that there can always be the unknown, the wild card that gets thrown in that can alter it. And even though Biden was being forced out by a prearranged plan, not one that he agreed to, by the way, but the powers that be were, and I believe Barack Obama was centered to a lot of this. Biden then derailed it by immediately endorsing Kamala and forcing everybody to jump on the Kamala train. And we've we've seen levels of gaslighting. And for folks not familiar with that phrase, gaslighting is when no matter what you see with your eyes and hear with your ears, you're going to be told that what you saw and heard didn't happen, that it's the exact opposite. So even though you've been watching a failing, demented Joe Biden for 3 years, growing increasingly worse, you were constantly being told that he was on top of his game and sharp as a tack and mentally alert and running rings around younger staffers, all lies. That became very apparent after the failed debate with Donald Trump. And then, so now we get introduced to a new level of gaslighting that here is Kamala Harris. If she was a man, she'd be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. She must be the Holy Mother. She is walking on water. She is a policy maven. And oh, by the way, she was never border czar, even though there's written articles, videotape, film, etc., detailing that. So what we're witnessing is just the curtain is being pulled back on this charade that is known as the American democracy and the Democrat Party. That this is the ultimate group of insiders who are trying to dictate the outcome and try to overcome the will of the American people.
I noticed that the Secret Service is relatively quick to identify the shooter as Thomas Matthew Crooks. They also told us that he was a registered Republican, but beyond that, they told us that he had left no social media or net-based trail, that it seemed to just have been eliminated, erased. Now, interestingly, I learned that he did have a social media platform on Gab, which is a popular social media platform for those who are censored and canceled everywhere else. I have a profile there because I went through a period in which I was banned for life on X, which used to be Twitter, banned for life on Facebook, where I'm still banned for life. Folks, if you see a Roger Stone on Facebook trying to sell you crypto or offer you a job or asking for your financial information, no, that is not me. Also not on Instagram, where I'm also banned for life. But when you look at those the posts attributed to Thomas Matthew Crooks, they are pro lockdown for the COVID-19 vaccination, and they're pro Biden. If he is, it is possible to look at the current voter files to see that he is indeed a Republican, but what we don't know yet is when he became a president. I've had a tipster tell me that he only became a Republican to vote against Donald Trump for Nikki Haley. Until there's an update by the state that can tell us when he registered, we won't know whether that is true. But interestingly, other sources, some in the Pennsylvania state law enforcement, have told me that of the possibility that the shooter is one Maxwell Yurick. Yurick is a man who has a criminal record of having assaulted Trump supporters at 2 previous events in Pennsylvania, who has an affiliation with Antifa, who also seems to have virtually no social media footprint. I don't have facial recognition technology, nor am I an expert, but somehow a picture of the dead assassin leaked. That's a story in itself. We don't know who put that photograph out. To me, it looks a bit more like Yurick. But look, I'm not saying that Crooks is or is not the shooter, but he could be a patsy. I'm not saying that Yurick is or is not the shooter. But as in the case of Lee Harvey Oswald, the government rushed to say that Oswald was the killer of Kennedy and that he acted alone. Now there's substantial evidence, which I published in my own book, that that's not the case. What are the chances here? A couple things, Larry. What are the chances are that perhaps Mr. Crooks is not the perp? Perhaps he didn't act alone. Perhaps there were other shooters. Ron Johnson did say on X, which used to be known as Twitter, that a government briefing told him that there was the possibility of more than one shooter, or that Crooks, the alleged shooter, had Confederates.
Yeah, let's start with what I think is pretty solid, which is that Crooks did not do this. He did not do this alone. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying there were multiple shooters at the scene. The problem I have with the multiple shooter theory is that when you look at the location where each of the people who were shot were standing, they were standing basically in alignment with the field of fire that corresponds to where the body of Thomas Crooks was found. So I think that in and of itself tends to dismiss that there were other shooters working with him. Because frankly, if there were multiple shooters trying to kill Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump would be dead and there would be a bunch of other dead people in the crowd. But fortunately, only one died, and Corey Campatori was sadly lost his life in that. But when you look at Crooks' behavior and his conduct, so he knows how to conduct surveillance. He knows how to pick out the right spot on the roof where he's not going to be visible to one of the Secret Service counter sniper teams. Is that just accidental good luck on his part? Or was that part of had he been trained to do some target surveillance by somebody else? He reportedly constructed 3 improvised explosive devices that were in his car, and apparently was going to detonate that car as part of a diversion attack to help aid his escape from the location. And we can't rule out that maybe he was deliberately killed to just keep him silent about who was helping him. The Heritage Foundation, they took availability of a public database on cell phones that you can pull up an address, and that address will show you what cell phones are located and operating at that address. And then you can trace those cell phones and see other places that they've gone, because advertisers use this information to target people. Well, lo and behold, they did that, and one of the cell phones that had been at that residence popped up literally a block from FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., in Gallery Place. So, coincidence? Yeah, you reach a point where there are so many failures and so many other odd coincidences that you have to really seriously question that, this narrative that this was just some lone crazy kid just smells bad.
All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there, which is a shame because I have so many more questions. I want to thank Larry Johnson, a former Central Intelligence Agency officer and intelligence analyst, for joining us today to talk about many of the troubling and still developing questions surrounding the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. Larry, thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show. And folks, don't go away because we'll be right back. Tulsi Gabbard plans to join us, the former Democrat Congresswoman and the last woman to engage Kamala Harris in a televised presidential debate. We'll be right back.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back for our final segment of The Roger Stone Show. We are now joined by former 4-term Congresswoman, 2020 presidential candidate, and New York Times bestselling author Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is a veteran with 3 deployments in war zones in the Middle East and Africa. She served in Iraq and Kuwait with distinction. She has served the country in uniform for more than 20 years. She's currently a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She was a 4-term member of Congress, a former co-chairman of the Democrat Party, who has left that party and explained it an extraordinary book, For Love of Country, essentially Leave the Democrat Party Behind is her book. I urge you to read it. My good friend Tucker Carlson, I think, summed this up when he said, Tulsi Gabbard is one of the bravest people in the United States, and if you doubt that, consider what she's lost for telling the truth about some of the most powerful people in the world. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for joining us on The Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. It's great to be with you.
So you are a shrewd observer of politics, as well as someone who speaks their mind and does so, I think, with great courage and bravery. You're also the last person to engage Kamala Harris, who seems to be now anointed in an entirely non-democratic process, despite the fact that nobody voted for her for president. The powers that be in the Democrat Party, indeed the deep state, if you will, seem to have anointed her. I think a good place to start here is by listening to your extraordinary exchange with her in the 2020 Democrat presidential debates. Let's play that.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death. Courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Epic television. So, Tulsi Gabbard, tell us about the selection of Kamala Harris. What's happening in today's Democrat Party, this process in which apparently in a bloodless coup, Joe Biden has been pressured, I think, to step aside for a woman whose entire record and past and very being, the media is working overtime to reinvent, even as we sit here. What's going on here?
Oh, quite frankly, Roger, none of this should surprise us at all. The Democrat Party, unfortunately, and again, I have seen this and experienced this myself, and it's one of the reasons why I left the Democrat Party, is they don't believe, not only do they not believe in democracy, they will not hesitate to actively undermine our democracy, both within the Democrat Party politics, but as we've seen play out in a very brazen way over this election, in doing so in the country. And we have talked about this, and you have talked about this over and over, and how they have weaponized the Department of Justice and law enforcement to try to tie up Donald Trump in court or in jail. They wish he was in jail. They try to remove his name from the ballot in over 32 states to prevent us as voters from even having the option to vote for him. And we're only stopped in doing so, thankfully, by a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. So the evidence is very clear that they are willing to destroy our democracy. We look back to 2016. I was vice chair of the DNC, and I saw how the chair of the DNC and that whole machine, the Democrat elite machine, rigged the primary for Hillary Clinton. Even Donna Brazile, who was a co-vice chair of the DNC, talked about this and wrote about this in her book. You fast forward to 2020. I experienced firsthand about how the Democrat elite, their friends in the mainstream propaganda media and in big tech, they all work together to choose the candidates that they wanted voters to choose from. And Kamala Harris was front and center within that small group. And for the rest of us, who they deemed as unacceptable to them, not to voters, but to them, because they knew, for me, for example, I was someone who they could not control. So they did everything that they could to try to cancel me and smear me and destroy my reputation and undermine my credibility and launch these media blackouts and just pretend that I wasn't even running for president. Fast forward to here where we are in 2024. They did their very best to try to prevent there from being a Democratic primary in this election. They canceled primary elections in some states. In other states, they wouldn't allow the candidates who were seeking to challenge Joe Biden in a Democrat primary. They wouldn't even let them have their names on the ballot. Once again, taking the right of voters, even Democrat primary voters, away from them so that they, the Democrat elite, the people who are unelected, could pick and choose who they want to be their figurehead that they can continue to control, just as they have with Joe Biden over these last 3.5 years. And clearly they have settled now on Kamala Harris as the new figurehead to replace Joe Biden. The big takeaway from all of this, Roger, is none of us as voters should be distracted by the political theater that is going on in the Democrat Party. We should know for certain that the policies will not change. The very same people who have been making the decisions behind the scenes on both domestic and foreign policy, who none of us elected, are going to continue to make those decisions and call the shots.
You raised an excellent point. We saw them beginning on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who initially announced his candidacy within the party of his uncle, John F. Kennedy, and his father, a former attorney general and New York U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy. But they told him that if he competed in the New Hampshire primary, which wasn't sanctioned, that his name couldn't be on the ballot in South Carolina and other subsequent contests. It was the same kind of rigging we saw done by the party to stop Bernie Sanders, who was a populist progressive. Many Sanders voters ended up voting for Donald Trump, almost a third, because when it came to war and trade, they agreed more with Trump than they did with Hillary Clinton. I specifically remember, Tulsi, that Hillary Clinton saying that because you don't support endless war, where our inherent national interests are not even remotely clear, that you're not just incorrect, that you were a Russian asset. She called you a Russian traitor. This is beyond belief. This is gaslighting to the nth degree.
Yes, this is true. And it's also important to note that not a single time was she ever questioned about making that extreme and baseless accusation. No reporter asked her for evidence. No one asked her, well, give us examples, concrete examples of how Tulsi Gabbard is who you say she is. And oh, by the way, I just want to remind people that she accused me of being a traitor to the country that I love and I'm willing to lay my life down for, at a time where I still served in the United States Congress. I served on the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs committees. I had access to the highest levels of intelligence in our country. I still serve in uniform in the Army, as I did then, as I do now. And that if she had some basis for this accusation, and if she was serious about it, then she would have pursued it. And what she accused me of is a crime punishable by death under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's how serious it is. But as you know very well, this is one of the many tactics that they use against their political opponents to try to silence us. to try to make an example out of us, to strike fear in the hearts of anyone else who may have a passing thought of challenging their power. Just because that came from Hillary Clinton, we shouldn't think that, oh, well, Hillary Clinton's not in power anymore and she's not relevant. No, she is one of these people who is in the deep state who is making decisions. She is the Democrat elite. She is the queen of woke warmongers. It is her. It is people like Jake Sullivan, who has been her lieutenant for decades. It is people like Tony Blinken, who has been Joe Biden's lieutenant for decades. There are many others who are profiting off of the military-industrial complex, those who are gaining more power in the national security state the longer we are in a state of counterproductive regime change wars that undermine our own country's national security interests. So all of these things that we're talking about, really we're talking about a Democrat Party that does not believe in freedom, that does not believe in the Constitution, and will undoubtedly continue to get us into more of these costly, counterproductive regime change wars that, once again, it's not even ambiguous about whether or not they serve our country's interests. They don't. They actually undermine our national security interests, and they undermine our economic interests. They are not in the interests of the American people. They only care about themselves and their power. And this will continue. If the Democrat elite are allowed to win in November, this will continue as it would have if Joe Biden was on the top of the ticket, and it will continue if Kamala Harris is elected as president.
I think anybody listening or who has followed me knows that I was among those who said that I thought you should be vetted and considered as a vice presidential candidate. I'm that impressed with your courage and your record and your qualifications, particularly when it comes to stepping up against the war machine. That was not to be. And, well, as President Richard Nixon, my mentor, used to say, always look forward, never look back. Now, President Trump has selected J.D. Vance for vice president. You see a media assault on Vance today. These reports that Trump is unhappy with Vance are untrue. The stories that he's going to replace her with a globalist warmonger, Nikki Haley, are completely and totally untrue. That's the epitome of fake news. Tell us your assessment of the choice of Senator J.D. Vance.
Look, I endorsed J.D. Vance when he ran for the U.S. Senate in 2022. I don't know him personally very well, but I have been impressed with his having the courage and the backbone to stand up against the military-industrial complex in the short time that he's been in the U.S. Senate. There are many neocons and neolibs that are in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And the fact that these neocons and neolib warmongers are freaking out because President Trump chose him as his running mate, I think is a good sign for those of us who cherish peace and security and freedom.
I agree with that. Look, it has been pointed out that he was once critical of Donald Trump. Well, if Donald Trump only gets the votes of those who were for him when he first ran in 2016, he won't win this election. But people change when they get more information. And as you point out, J.D. Vance has an actual record now in the U.S. Senate where he has stood up against the war machine. He's expressed grave concerns about shipping billions more to Ukraine. He's expressed concerns about the fact that we have no peace talks, no ceasefire negotiations. We're not even having a discussion scuttled not by the Russians, not by the Ukrainians, but by our State Department. He's 39 years old. That's the same age Senator Richard Nixon was when he was tapped to be vice president by Dwight Eisenhower. I do think as a campaigner, he still has to get his sea legs, but he has a compelling personal story to tell. He comes from humble origins. He comes from a working class, blue collar, rural background. He's an entrepreneur like you. He served his country in Iraq. Don't attack him because he has stepped forward where Kamala Harris never has. The assault on him tells me that they're afraid that even the changing dynamics of this race, with Kamala Harris being a woman, No, Trump is not going to swap him out, and I think he will prove over time to be an asset to this ticket. I was happy that the president was not talked into choosing someone who was a neocon. This outdated idea of balancing the ticket with people who don't agree with you, it's not how this needs to be done. We need someone who truly, honestly supports the America First anti-war machine, anti-globalist agenda. That turned out to be J.D. Vance. Folks, you're listening to The Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. We're with Tulsi Gabbard, a woman of enormous courage, and we'll be right back.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back to The Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. Folks, now would be a great time to go to the App Store and download the 77 WABC Radio app so you don't miss any of the great programming here on the most dynamic AM radio station in America. We're talking to Tulsi Gabbard. She is the author of For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. It's an extraordinarily compelling read that lays out in great detail her evolution. People in politics or in life who don't change their mind when they get additional information, those are not the people I want leading us. Tulsi Gabbard explains her political odyssey and why she believes what she does and why she has emerged now as a major critic of the party that elected her, or under whose banner, I should say, she was elected to Congress, as well as the Hawaiian State Legislature. She also has served her country as a combat veteran in Iraq and Kuwait. She retains the title of Lieutenant Colonel even today in the U.S. Army Reserve. She's also an avid sportswoman, shooter, and surfer, and we're honored to have her with us today. How do you assess this election? The Democrat Party is trying the big gaslighting media buildup, trying to make Kamala Harris something that in terms of just talent and positions, just to me, seems so fraudulent. But there seems to be a rush to get questions regarding the attempted assassination of Donald Trump out of the news, to get any halo of what I thought was a very good Republican convention out of the news, to now focus on the selection of a Democrat who would run for vice president. How do you think this election will look going forward, recognizing that it's a hard question because we're in the eye of the storm, and the Democrats have not yet had their convention. They don't yet have a legal nominee. But how do you see the general election stacking up?
Well, we're gonna continue to see exactly what you just pointed out, is a whitewashing of Kamala Harris's record and a revisionist history being written about exactly what kind of person she is and what kind of president she'll be. It's going to be important for us to keep reminding people of the truth. And people need to realize Kamala Harris would be an even worse president from the country's standpoint than Joe Biden, because she's rooted in an ideology. She is an ideologue, and she's rooted in an ideology that's far more extreme than Joe Biden and anything that he has ever stood for. There are two very glaring and obvious and serious examples, one being the border. Obviously, President Biden, one of the first things, it was the first thing that he tasked her with, was border security. Well, let's look at what Kamala Harris, obviously she failed disastrously at securing our border, but there's a reason for that. It's not just incompetence. It's the fact that when she looks at our illegal immigration crisis, and even though she hasn't been willing to say that out loud, what she really believes is that the problem is not our secure or unsecure borders, our open borders. The real problem is poverty and crime in other countries. And so she believes that before we can succeed in securing our borders and dealing with this illegal immigration crisis, we have to basically go and defeat poverty and crime, not only in Central and South America, but throughout the world, because we have people traveling to our open borders from around the world and coming across them illegally. Second, the thing that we should be very concerned about as Kamala Harris is yet again touting that she will be a prosecutor president, just like she did in 2020, is recognize at a practical level, what does that actually mean? As we've seen over these last 3.5 years, she will not hesitate to weaponize our Department of Justice and law enforcement agencies to go after those that she deems as real or perceived political opponents, those who pose a threat to her power, those who get in the way of her getting whatever it is she wants. You look at what's happened over the last 3.5 years, Kamala Harris will be that times 10, making what we've seen so far in the brazen abuse of power coming from the Democrat elite seem like child's play. Those are just two of the many issues that we should be concerned about in our country, about what kind of president Kamala Harris would be and how dangerous she would be for our country, our freedom, our ability to live in a peaceful and prosperous society and to truly live free.
It's extraordinary that Kamala Harris actually attacked Joe Biden, called him a racist in the Democrat debates because of his authorship of the 1994 crime bill, which is the first time that the war on drugs was now focused not on drug cartels or drug traffickers or drug kingpins, but on the end users. It is the 1994 crime bill that required the harsh mandatory penalties for the first time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs, which has been used unfairly and outrageously to incarcerate a disproportionate number of black people and poor people and the disadvantaged. It is extraordinary to me that she had the gumption to do that, given the fact that she herself prosecuted, I believe, over 5,000 cases that meet this definition. At the same time, joking about her own use of marijuana, as she said, listening to Tupac and Biggie at a time in college, when she was in college, and Tupac and Biggie were not around and hadn't recorded any music. In an effort, I guess, to be cool. I'm not sure what that was about, but her proposal to have U.S. taxpayers pay for the health care of what could be as many as 20, probably more, million illegals in the country is a perfect example of the kind of policy record that I think the Trump campaign and Republicans must stay focused on. Attacking her because you think she's dumb, or attacking her over her alleged sexual history, in my opinion, is an egregious mistake. She needs to be called to account for her public record as a prosecutor, as a senator, as a vice president. I think it is dangerous. I think it would actually inadvertently help her to engage in name calling and personal attacks.
I agree. I mean, voters expect more from those who are running for office and who are asking to serve in public office. And they're concerned about safety of their kids and their ability to provide for them and what kind of education are they going to get. And Kamala Harris has a significant record in every single public office that she has held that goes against the interests of the people that she has been charged to serve, both as a district attorney, as attorney general, as a U.S. senator, and as vice president. And speaking of parents and children, one law that she championed in California was to arrest parents if their kids didn't show up to school. She championed that law and then saw single moms hauled away from their houses in handcuffs because their kids didn't go to school.
I apologize for interrupting you. Thank you for joining us. We have to leave it there. Thank you, Tulsi Gabbard, for joining us on the Roger Stone Show. Folks, stay tuned. Joe Piscopo will be right along with Sundays with Sinatra.